Right then, so let's get started and pick it up from where we left off in the last session. So we were talking about SQL used for the purposes of DML, right? So data manipulation এর জন্য SQL যখন আমরা use করি. First we started with the insert, delete and update commands. So we've already talked about the insert commands. Um, so whenever we want to, after we're done creating all the tables, that is after we're done setting up the skeleton of the entire database, we have to start inserting the data, right? Table gulo to so far they're empty. We have to start inserting the data. How do we insert the data? There are a couple of procedures to do that. One is, first and foremost, for all different methods, you must start the command with the insert into command. Insert into command, this is what you start with always. Insert into and then the name of the table, and then followed by the values keyword. Values keyword, SQL keyword, by the way. So you cannot make any changes to that or the structure. And then followed by the values that you want to insert. Now, the thing to note here is the values that you're passing as parameters inside the parentheses, the order of the values must match with the order of the columns in the table. তার মানে কি বুঝাতে যাচ্ছি, আমি যখন টেবিলটা ক্রিয়েট করেছি, কাস্টমার টি টেবিলটা যখন ক্রিয়েট করেছি, ওখানে কোন কলামটা আগে আছে কোন কলামটা পরে আছে এটার উপরে ডিপেন্ড করে আমার ভ্যালুগুলোর অর্ডারটাও ম্যাচ করতে হবে. রিমেম্বার দ্যাট our relations are made up of tuples. Every single row of data are tuples. And the thing that separates tuples from sets is that order matters in case of tuples. Tuples এর ক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু order matter করে. So the order must match. এই যে আমি যে ফার্স্ট পজিশনে 001 ভ্যালুটা বসালাম, এটা যাবে কোথায়? কাস্টমার আইডিতে. Why? Customer ID এখানে কোথাও লেখা নেই কিন্তু. But how do I know 001 will go to customer ID? Because when we were creating the customer table, customer ID is the first column that we created. Right? And if we were to take a look at our customer table, here. So these are all of our tables, right? If all of you guys, as I suggested in the last session, if all of you guys have done creating the tables, then you should get all of these tables in your PVFC database, all right? So if you take a look at the customer table, see here, customer ID is first in order. So that's where the first value will go. The value in position 1. And then the second value will automatically go to customer name. Once again, is customer name mentioned anywhere in the command? No, it's not. It's not mentioned anywhere in the query. So how do we know that this will go to customer name? Because once again, customer name was the second column that we created. And if you take a look at the customer table, customer name is indeed the second column in order. So basically, what we need to remember is that if we execute the command in such a manner, we must place the values in the respective position corresponding to the positions of the columns in the table based on the order that we've created, right? The order must match. Table e je column ta age oi column er value amake age boshate hobe, je column pore oi column er value pore boshate hobe, like that. So what's a way to work around that? And a way to work around that is to go in this manner. Let's say, for example, we want to insert into the department table, all right? But we don't know whether the department code column was created first or the department name column was created first. That is, department table er moddhe department code column ta age ache naki department name age ache, we don't know that. So what we can do is, just like the values, we can pass the column names as well as parameters beside the table name. Table name er pashe parenthesis er bhitore amar column name guloke ami pass korbo. And এইখানে আমি কলাম নেম গুলো যে অর্ডারে পাস করছি এই একই অর্ডারে আমার ভ্যালু গুলো পাস করলেই চলবে. I do not need to consult with the actual table and see what is the actual order of the columns. টেবিলটা দেখে আমার কলামগুলো অ্যাকচুয়াল অর্ডার কি এটা আমার জানতে হবে না if I do it in this way. Department code, department name and corresponding values. As you can see here in the previous command, inserting into the same table, inserting into the same columns, but the order, we have changed the order. Department code, goes second, department name comes first. And correspondingly, the values, the order of the values have been changed as well. The name that we wanted to insert, we put that first, and the code we put second, as per the order of the column names within the command. So one of two ways to insert, all right? Acha. Now, what happens then when we don't have some of the data of a certain table? See here that product table, right? The product table, if you take a look at it, it has product ID, product line ID, product description, finish, standard price. So basically 5 columns, yeah? However, how many values do we have here? Take a look. Right after values, keyword, how many values do you have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's right. 5 columns, 4 values. Surely one must be missing. That is, we don't have one of the values for one of the columns. So what do we do in that case? In that case, this sort of structure for the command will never work because the DBMS doesn't know which one will be left null. Oh, it will work if you specifically mention the value to be null. যে পজিশনের ভ্যালুটা নাল হবে ওখানে যদি আমি নাল মেনশন করে দিই then it will work. Other than that, এই যে জাস্ট এই চারটা ভ্যালু যে প্রোভাইড করলাম ভ্যালুস এর পাশে প্যারেনথেসিসের ভিতরে যে আমরা চারটা ভ্যালু পাস করছি এইভাবে যদি আমরা চারটা ভ্যালু পাস করি কলাম নেমগুলোকে মেনশন না করি see here the column names are mentioned beside the table name. If we were to do it this way, that is, we don't mention the column name like the first, very much like the first procedure that we saw. If we were to do it this way, then it would give us an error. If we do something like this, it will give us an error. Right? So if we go to the query tool, right? If you go to the query tool and if we try to insert these values into the product table, you will see that we will get an error. Either an error or the values will be inserted in the wrong way. Right? There you go. Column count doesn't match value count at row 1. All right? So there you go. The column count. Why? Because the column count is 5, remember. And the value count here is what? 4. Value count is 4, column count is 5. Dimensions don't match, insert won't work. All right? So what do we do? The solution is to specify the table, the column names, right? So if you were to specify the column names, now that changes the whole scenario. Just like this solution here, this structure, where we mention the column name and the values will be passed into those specific columns that we have mentioned and following the order in which we have specified the columns or passing the columns as parameters. Same thing will happen here as well. Product পাশে আমরা product ID, description, finish, আর product standard price দিয়ে দিলাম. So the first value in the values array, let's say 1, will be put into product IDs. The second value, end table, will be put into the column in the second position, which is product description. The third value, cherry, will be put into the column in the third position, product finish. And the fourth value will be put into the column in the fourth position. All right? And the column that is left out, simply that will be left null. This will be allowed. This is allowed. What's going to happen here is that, so we've left out, if you notice, from the product table, we've left out the product line ID value, right? Product line ID value is missing. Here in the command, product line ID value is missing. So in that specific row, in the product table, product ID value, product ID will have a value of 1, product description will have a value of end table, product finish will have a value of cherry, product standard price will have a value of 175.8, and product line ID will have a value of null. Product line ID তে automatically null চলে যাবে. That's what's going to happen. And this is allowed. Okay.
Miss, which one's not allowed then?
The example just that we just saw a while back. So here, what I was talking about is if we didn't mention the column name, say যে এই জায়গাটায় আমরা যে column name mention করে দিলাম, এটা যদি
Okay, yeah.
column nameটা mention না করতাম, in that case, it wouldn't work, right? This
Okay,
wouldn't
Miss,
work.
got it.
Do you understand why it wouldn't work though?
Because we didn't specify the column names that the values will
No,
be
no, yes, but
linked.
why do we need to specify the column names?
column name.
Because there's more columns than there are values we
That's
want to
right.
put
So
in.
if we were to specify the column name, তাহলে আমরা বলে দিচ্ছি এখানে কোন ভ্যালুটা কোন কলামে যাবে। সো অ্যাকচুয়াল টেবিলে 5টা কলাম আর এখানে 4টা ভ্যালু, এটা সমস্যাই না। কারণ ডিবিএমএস তো অ্যাকচুয়াল টেবিলের কলামগুলো দেখবে না, সে দেখবে এগুলো। সে দেখবে এই কলামগুলো, ওকে, এই কলামের মধ্যে ভ্যালুগুলো বসাবে। Right? However, can anyone tell me if this would work? Any idea? If this would work? Here.
Primary key ছাড়া তো কিছু দেওয়া যাবে না, I guess.
Exactly. Very good. See here, the dimensions match. 3 columns, 3 values. But this would not work, right? This would not work. Why is that? Because we are not inserting the primary key value. And without a primary key, we cannot insert a value. The primary key cannot be null. Remember, the primary key has the not null constraint on it. এখানে একটা constraint violation হবে. Try this out in your own panels, let's say. ঠিক আছে? So if you were to do something like this, okay, here. Let's write the entire query again, aren't I? So if you get rid of the product ID here, we will definitely get an error. Make the dimensions match. Then execute. Yeah. Product ID doesn't have a default value, which means that product ID is not supposed to be null. If you go to the product table, product ID, the rest of them, see here, they can be null. They can be of this data type or null. But product ID must have a value, cannot be null. So if it cannot be null, either we have to provide a value or we have to provide a default value, neither of which was provided. So that's why it doesn't work. Okay, remember these things.
Ma'am,
Yes.
for a primary key to have a default value, does that make sense?
For a primary key to have a default value,
Yeah.
if the default value can be guaranteed to be unique, then yes. Otherwise, no. যে ডিফল্ট ভ্যালুটা হতে পারে, ধরো তুমি বলতে চাচ্ছ সিস ডেট or এরকম কিছু একটা, ঠিক আছে? তো না, সিস্টেম ডেটও তো
Yeah, like time.
System date in rare cases, system date can also not be unique or repeated. Let's say random generator, একটা random generator use করলা or something like that, random generator থেকে একটা নাম্বার যাবে, ঠিক আছে? And that will
Or
be the
maybe
default
like
value or something
Unix
like that.
timestamp or something.
Yeah, unique timestamp or something like that. এরকম হলে maybe it would work, but default value in the sense that আমি default value দিয়ে রাখবো 5, সবসময় 5 হবে যদি নাও দেওয়া হয়, no, that will not work. Why will not that work? Because primary key has to be unique, right? So that won't work. Okay, so right then. So remember our UniDB example and the UniDB schema that we had. So if we were to insert into the engineering course table now, if you wanted to insert into the engineering course table, how many columns are there in the engineering course table? Let's first see that. So this is our engineering course table. We have 4 columns here, right? We have 4 columns here. However, while inserting, let's say for a certain course that we want to insert here, it doesn't have a lab. ঠিক আছে? A certain course doesn't have a lab. So lab value তে boolean value যাবে false. Lab will have a boolean value of false. And lab credit, we don't have a value for lab credit either because it doesn't have a lab. What do we do then? How do we insert values into the engineering course table? Do you understand the scenario? We are trying to insert the data of a certain course which does not have a lab. So lab, the value for the lab column will be false. Means that it doesn't have a lab. And since it doesn't have a lab, lab credit bolte to kono kichu nahi. Lab credit is empty or null. So what can we do here?
আগের মতো তিনটা জাস্ট সিলেক্ট করে দিয়ে দেব।
তিনটা কলাম স্পেসিফিক্যালি পাস করতে হবে যেগুলোর মধ্যে আমরা ভ্যালুগুলো ইনসার্ট করতে চাচ্ছি আর যে কলামটাতে ভ্যালু ইনসার্ট করতে পারছি না we will leave that column out. Lab credit এ কোনো ভ্যালু নেই আমাদের কাছে. If you take a look here, there is no lab credit column here. There's only lab. Okay. That's why this will work because the first value will go to the column in the first position. CAC 201 will go to course code, false will go to lab, CAC will go to dep code. And there is no lab credit in the columns that we have mentioned here. That's why automatically by default for this row, lab credit will be null. And since lab credit is nullable, we won't get any error. However, এই জিনিসটা যদি আমরা বাদ দিতাম, if we were to leave this out, in that case, will it work?
No, we will have to write null after false.
Very good. Yes, that's what I was getting to as well. So এই জায়গাটায়, on the other hand, if we were to mention null, that lab credit এর যে positionটা, remember the schema, course code, then lab credit, then dep code. So আমাদের course code এর value, তারপরে lab এর value, তারপর lab credit এর value দিলাম null, pass করে দিলাম, and then the department code. এভাবে দিলে it would actually work because we have 4 values, 4 columns, and the values match as well. Okay, but safer option is to do this. You always know which columns you're going to and what you're entering. You know that, and you can control that. So that's better. Right then. So it's also possible to insert data from a table, a subset of data. Let's say, for example, we want to create a subset of the customer table, right? The CA customer underscore T table. So CA customer underscore T table to create করলাম. The structure is exactly the same as the customer table. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. CA customer underscore T যখন create করেছি, customer underscore T create করার সময় আমরা যে কলামগুলো ইউজ করেছি, যে কলামগুলো যে অর্ডারে ক্রিয়েট করেছি, the constraints, everything, the data type, everything has to be exactly the same in the CA customer underscore T table as well because it's going to be a subset of customer table. So obviously it has to be the same. But what I was talking about is inserting a subset of data from the customer table into this new table. How can we do that? What we'll do here is select all from customer table where customer state is CA. This part, what it will do is select a subset of the data from the customer table. Let's see what this does. Just this part. এই select part to কি করে এটা আমরা একটু দেখি, ঠিক আছে? Let's go back to our query tool. So let's try that out. See here what it does. So customer table, the entire, take a look at the entire customer table. This is the entire customer table, all right? We're selecting all without any conditions or anything. We're selecting all from the customer table. And this is the result of our command. With a condition where customer state value is CA. Only in those columns, only in those rows where the customer state value is CA, only those rows are selected. See here, customer state value varies from FL to TX to NY to anything else. CA is the value only in row number 5 and row number 8. Row number 5 and row number 8 has the value CA in customer state. All right. So what's going to happen is only those rows are selected because of this condition where customer state is equal to CA. So the DBMS will go to the table. It will look for the customer state values under the customer state column. Customer state column এর মধ্যে কোন value CA, it will look for that. and it will select only those rows. আচ্ছা ওই row গুলো নিয়ে আসলো ওই row গুলো এখন নিয়ে এসে what am I doing? What we're doing here is we're inserting into the customer table, right? CA customer table. So simply those two rows will be inserted into this table, CA customer underscore T table. Given that the structure of CA customer underscore T table, or the definition, the table definition of CA customer underscore T table is exactly the same as the customer T table. Right? So we can do that as well. And finally,
Ma'am,
yes.
is there any way like I don't have to create the CA customer T table আগে থেকে? Like directly at the subset pull করে I make the subset and then name it?
But how can you insert the data without the table itself? Can you
Yeah,
insert
so
data into an array before creating the array?
yeah, so it's like one step a creation and insertion.
Creation and insertion together, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
No,
because like
we always have
since
to define the tables first, all right? In relational database, it doesn't work like that. I know what you're talking about. Sometimes in programming, we do that we create and instantiate at the same time. But in DBMS, sorry, in the relational database, you cannot do that. You have to create first. You have to create the table first, right? Table to create করার পরে তারপরে you insert into the table, all right? You can write a
I
population
asked,
script. You can write a population script where you place the commands one after the other. যে creator পরপর insert রেখেছো এভাবে একটা population script লিখতে পারো, but nonetheless the create command must come first. Yes, বলো।
I asked that since CA customer T must have the exact same structure as customer T. So like you showed us at the like at the beginning, like bringing up a subset, like select থেকে, and then
Yeah.
so
No. See here, select is a query command in the sense that it just fetches data. It doesn't manipulate the data. This is not a DML command for changing the data. This is a DML command just for fetching the data. Select only fetches data. Select does not have the power to change the data. All right. So this, what it will do, yes, you will see advanced SQL later on, যেখানে আমরা এই সিলেক্টের ক্রাইটেরিয়াটা ইউজ করে আমরা ভিউ ক্রিয়েট করতে পারবো, ঠিক আছে? View tables like temporary tables and so on, ঠিক আছে? But this here, এই জায়গাটায় যে জিনিসটা দেখানো হচ্ছে, এখানে যেটা দেখানো হচ্ছে, this one is not a let's say a copy table or a duplicate table or a temporary table or anything like that. This is not a view table basically, all right? This is a base table. But what base tables are, what dynamic views are, we'll talk about that later in more advanced SQL later on. But for now, understand that how we've created all the rest of the tables, CA customer underscore T will be created the exact same way. That is, in terms of hierarchy, it has the same power as the rest of the table. It's a base table. We call that a base table, all right? The tables that are there that contain the actual data, all right? The base table. And if you wanted to insert into a base table, একটা base table যদি আমরা insert করতে চাই, তাহলে আমাদেরকে first base tableটাকে create করতে হবে, এরপরে just how you see it ওটাতে insert করতে হবে. But if you're fine with not creating a base table and you're okay with it just being a view, একটা view হিসেবে থাকবে, ঠিক আছে? It's not one of the actual tables or the original tables with the actual data and all that. It's just a view. In that case, yes, we can do something like that. এই select use করে আমরা একটা view create করতে পারি, ঠিক আছে? In that case,
such as for a temporary graph.
for a temporary graph তো না, SQL তো graph generate করে না, table, simply table.
Yeah, so like
the
graph
difference between
that pulls data from the table.
Yeah. So difference between the base table, yeah, that would work. Graph that pulls data from the table, and that table would be a dynamic view. You can do that for sure. But the difference between the base table and the dynamic view is that the base table is there actually in the physical database as a table. That is একটা টেবিলগুলোর মধ্যে কলাম আছে, কলামের মধ্যে data আছে. And the view table, the dynamic view that we create, that table is just a table definition. It does not actually contain a data. Whenever we call upon that table is filled up with data and showed to the viewer. And the moment the viewer is done, that table goes away as well. That is, it is not a permanent table in the physical database at all. All right. We'll look at these concepts later on. More complex SQL যখন আমরা দেখবো তখন দেখবো. Right now, no need to be frazzled about these ideas. But for now, what you need to understand is base table যদি আমরা create করতে যাই, আর একটা subset table যদি আমরা বানাই, which is going to be a base table, an actual table. By base table, we mean an actual table that will exist in the physical database, full of data at all times. এরকম কোনো টেবল ক্রিয়েট করতে চাইলে you must first create the table as we have done so far and then insert. That's the only way. If you want the table to be one of the base tables, which will be there in the physical database with data at all times. All right.
Got it, ma'am.
Okay. Right then, moving on. Let's say, for example, in a certain scenario, you might have the situation where you want to auto-generate your primary key. We have provisions for that as well. In raw SQL, it's done in this way. Once again, this is subject to change based on which database you use. But every database has that option, all right? এরকম auto-generated primary key with a certain increment within a certain range. As you can see here, in basic SQL, what we do is, while we are defining the attribute, let's say here, this primary key, we specify that it's generated as identity, that as primary key, and that is as an ID, and the value range we also mentioned, how it will start, how it will increment, what is the cap, all of that. Start with 1. It will start from the value 1, then increment by 1 for every new insertion. So the first row inserted will have the value 1, the second one 2, the third one 3, and so on, until 10,000. And after 10,000, something has to be done because no cycle. That is, after 10,000, we cannot circle back and start from 1 again. Why? Because it's mentioned that no cycle. So this is all right for the first 10,000 rows, auto-generated for the first 10,000 rows. We can do something like that, actually. If you want to auto-generate the values of a certain attribute, not just the primary key, by the way, for any attribute, if you want to auto-generate within a certain range in this manner, we can do. There are mechanisms for that in all databases. For basic SQL, raw SQL, this is how you state it. Okay. And in that case, remember that our insertion commands into the customer table will change a little bit as well. Because now that we've already defined how the primary key will increment, that is, every single time a new row is inserted into the customer table, the primary key will be inserted automatically by the DBMS. We will not provide the primary key anymore. So previously, আমাদের command টা ছিল কিরকম? It was like this: ID, then name, then address, and so on. এভাবে provide করেছিলাম. But this command will have to change in that we have to skip the ID part. এই 001 যেটা আমরা ID তে insert করার চেষ্টা করছিলাম, এই ভ্যালুটা বাদ দিয়ে দিতে হবে. We cannot insert this value anymore. এই ভ্যালুটা বাদ দিয়ে দিতে হবে because we have mentioned while creating the customer table that the primary key will be auto-generated every single time a row is inserted. Based on this logic, the primary key will be inserted automatically by the database or by the DBMS, right? So we'd have to skip that. So if you wanted to auto-generate the values of a certain attribute or a certain column, you could do that. Remember that there are mechanisms in the database for that. And for raw SQL, this is how you write it, right? Now then, enough talk about insertion. Deleting data. Deleting data is pretty much straightforward, just like inserting data as well. However, when it comes to deleting data, remember to include the where clause if there is one. Because without the where clause, it will be a very dangerous thing. Why? Because if we were to do something like this, where clause বাদ দিয়ে just where clause টা যদি ভুলে যে এরকম কিছু একটা করি, will it give us an error? Do you think this will give us an error?
No.
That is the problem.
Customer
That is the problem. It will not actually give us an error. Error দিলে তো better হতো, বুঝতাম আচ্ছা
It'll delete everything.
It will delete everything, exactly, which is worse. It won't give us an error. What it'll do is it'll go to the customer table and delete all rows, all data from the customer table, which is not something that you want. So yes.
Will the from keyword not affect anything? Like, won't
From.
the DBMS ask like why did you use from and not say anything else?
From is to notify or specify which or direct towards which table, from which table we want to delete. From customer T, right? So just how insert into is the
Yeah,
word that,
like
yeah.
I see the thing, like I direct the SQL like DBMS to go to customer T table and delete something from that table. So
Acha, are you
is
talking about, are you comparing this with the structure of the select command, let's say, how we mentioned what we are selecting, select all or select what
yeah,
and so on?
yeah.
No, that is the problem. See, এই জন্য delete command we have to be very careful. Delete clause এর ক্ষেত্রে there is no delete all or delete something or delete blah 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 from between delete and from. It doesn't work like that. The entire clause comes in this way. Just how insert into, in case of insert into, this entire thing is the command. See, just how insert into is the command. The entire clause is insert into. Pura clause take into insert into. Similarly, in case of delete as well, it's not delete something from. It's not like that. The entire clause, the entire command is delete from. The entire clause is delete from. There is no such thing as delete something from. এর মাঝখানে actually তুমি কোনো কিছু দিতেই পারবা না. That is the command. That is the SQL command, delete from. All right?
Got it, man.
It's not the same as the select
Studio
clause.
bad design, I guess.
Well, you could say that, but actually,
Like
no,
if I
I
wanted to
wouldn't say
delete
that.
the customer
See
table,
here,
I
see
should
here,
just
wait.
delete
No,
customer
no, no,
table.
wait. When you use select, all right? When you use select, it's actually not very different from the select command in the sense that when you use select, remember that when you're specifying select all, what are you specifying? All columns. You're not specifying the rows here, Kintu. You're not specifying the rows. This is
No,
for
ma'am. Like
columns.
my
Wait, hear
problem
my
is with
point.
where.
No, no, hear my point. Hear my point. Select all. Once again, you're selecting the columns, all right? Columns. Column gulo select korcho. This part is the one that specifies the rows. Where clause is the one that specifies the rows. Where clause গিয়ে আমি row গুলো specify করছি। Select আর from এর মাঝে যে all বলছি বা all এর জায়গায় যদি আমি বলি customer ID, ঠিক আছে? ID and customer name, ঠিক আছে? If I say something like that, all right? This part is only talking about the columns. That's all. Okay? Just the columns. This part here, specifying the columns or the attributes. The rows are specified here. The rows. Which rows? It is specified using the where clause. Now, here, if you were to insert something in between delete from, এই অপশনটা যদি আমরা রাখতাম যে এখানে কিছু একটা ইনসার্ট করা যাবে, or we can insert
Oh,
something
so
here.
that would delete only
That,
the specific
exactly,
columns.
it's specific columns, which is worse. You don't
Yes,
want
ma'am.
that option at all. We
Got
don't
it,
want
got
that
it.
option at all in SQL. All right? এই জিনিসটা তো আমরা চাই না। তাহলে তো মানে the dimension won't be right because we don't want to delete columns at all. All right? So that's
Yes,
why
ma'am. Got it.
we must
Okay, to
mention.
clarify, when you write delete from customer table, you're gonna delete the customer table data, not the table itself. ওইটার জন্য drop table use করতে হবে, right?
That's right. If you want to delete the table itself, you can use drop customer table. All right? Drop the table. That's right. But if you want to delete data from a certain table, you must use the delete from command. All right? You must use the delete from command. And when you do that, you must remember to use the where clause. If you don't use, if you want to delete everything from a table, if that is your intention, sure, go ahead, do that, no problem. But if that is not your intention, never forget the where clause. Because if you did this, কোনো error তো পাবা না, যেটা হবে customer table থেকে সবগুলো row এর data delete করে দেয়া হবে. All right? But if you include the where clause, however, it will go to only those rows where the customer state value is HI and delete only those rows. Selective rows delete করবে। Error দেয় না বলে অথবা confirmation চায় না বলে we have to be all the more careful in these cases. Okay?
So basically, when we're reading this we would like mentally think of it like delete all columns from customer table.
Yeah, that's how you should think
Yeah.
of it, তাই না? Because
Got it.
select এর ক্ষেত্রে you can select specific column because select is not changing anything. Select is not really changing anything. So select এর ক্ষেত্রে আমি কি specific column select করতে পারছি, no problem. But delete এর ক্ষেত্রে it's a very risky slope. If you delete something from an entire column, all right, it makes the whole thing even messier, all right? So that's why. And also, in some cases, you won't even be able to delete a certain column if it's not allowed to be null. So that's why ওই অপশনটাই রাখা হয়নি যে আমি কোনো স্পেসিফিক কলামের ভ্যালু ডিলিট করবো, ওই অপশনটাই অ্যাকচুয়ালি নেই, right? To avoid scenarios like that. And rarely would you need it. Actually, we don't need something like that ever. Right? So yeah.
ম্যাম কাস্টমার টেবিলে যদি একটা কলাম থাকে ফরেন কি এর অন্য একটা ইস্যু, তখন ডিলিট দিলে কি ওটাও ডিলিট হয়ে যাবে?
একটু better explain করতে হবে, আমি বুঝতে পারছি না আসলে what
ম্যাম
you're talking about.
কাস্টমার টেবিলে যদি ফরেন কি থাকে, তখন যদি আমি ডিলিট কমান্ডটা এক্সিকিউট করি তখন কি ফরেন কি এর কলামটাও ডিলিট হয়ে যাবে?
ফরেন কি কলামের ভ্যালুটা ডিলিট হয়ে যাবে, হ্যাঁ। মানে if you're talking about কাস্টমার টেবিলে কোনো ফরেন কি থাকলে নাকি কাস্টমার আইডি অন্য কোনো টেবিলের ফরেন কি যদি হয়ে থাকে, এটার কথা বল, কোনটার কথা বলছো? বিকজ
কাস্টমার টেবিলে ফরেন কি থাকলে,
কাস্টমার টেবিলে ফরেন কি থাকলে এটা প্রবলেম কেন হবে? প্রবলেম কখন হয়? আমাদের কেয়ারফুল প্রাইমারি কি ফরেন কি রেফারেন্সের ক্ষেত্রে ইন্টিগ্রিটি রুল নিয়ে কেয়ারফুল থাকতে হয় কখন? যখন হচ্ছে গিয়ে আমার টেবিলের প্রাইমারি কি অন্য আরেকটা টেবিলের ফরেন কি, ধরো কাস্টমার আইডি is the foreign key for some other table, which is the case, all right? এখানে there are other tables where customer ID is the foreign key, all right? So এখন যদি আমি কোনো একটা স্পেসিফিক কাস্টমার আইডি ডিলিট করে দিই, সো ওই টেবিলে যে কাস্টমার আইডি ভ্যালুটা আছে সে কাকে রেফার করছে? ওই ভ্যালু তো আর এক্সিস্ট করে না। Do you understand what I'm talking about? See here. Let's say we select all from the customer table. This is all our customers. Now let's take a look at order table. Acha. Select. Yeah, order table has customer ID, right? Okay. So this is order. Now, order table এর মধ্যে what do we have here? Notice that there are certain customer IDs here, values here, pointing towards who? Referring those specific customers from the customer table. ঠিক আছে? এখন দেখো, আচ্ছা, ধরো কাস্টমার টেবিল থেকে তুমি ফার্স্ট রোটা ডিলিট করে দিলা। You want to delete the first row. Customer ID 1J, contemporary casuals, সে আমাদের কাস্টমার আর না, মানে they have stopped being our customers and we want to delete their data. তাদের ডেটা আমি পুরা রো ডিলিট করে দিলাম। That will be a problem. Why? Because this value, customer ID 1, this one value is present in the order table. আমি যদি কাস্টমার টেবিল থেকে এই পুরা রোটা ডিলিট করে দিই, তার মানে কি কাস্টমার আইডি 1 বলতে কেউ কি আর এক্সিস্ট করে?
নো।
নো, এমন কোনো কাস্টমার নেই যার কাস্টমার আইডি 1। সো অর্ডার টেবিলে গিয়ে এই যে এই রোতে যে কাস্টমার আইডি 1 দেয়া, এই রোতে যে কাস্টমার আইডি 1 দেয়া, এই দুটো রো কার কথা বলছে? দেয়ার ইজ নো কাস্টমার আইডি 1। কাস্টমার আইডি 1 এর কোনো কাস্টমারই তো নেই, সে কার কথা বলছে? দ্যাট ইজ দ্য প্রবলেম। ওকে, সো এরকম সিচুয়েশনে হচ্ছে কি আমাদেরকে ওই যে ক্যাসকেড রুল বা সেট টু নাল রুল বা রেস্ট্রিক্ট রুল, এরকম কোন একটা রুল বসাতে হয়। এরকম কোন রুল থাকলে ডেটাবেস উইল হ্যান্ডেল দ্য সিচুয়েশন অ্যাকর্ডিংলি। রেস্ট্রিক্ট রুলের ক্ষেত্রে আমাদেরকে যেটা বলবে যে এই যে কাস্টমার টেবিল থেকে এই রোটা আমাদেরকে অ্যাকচুয়ালি ডিলিটই করতে দিবে না। সে বলবে যে এই কাস্টমার আইডিটা ইজ বিং রেফারেন্স সামওয়্যার এলস এন্ড উই উইল হ্যাভ টু হ্যান্ডেল দ্যাট ফার্স্ট। মেবি আমাদেরকে ম্যানুয়ালি গিয়ে অর্ডার টেবিলে যে এই কাস্টমার আইডি ভ্যালুটা নিয়ে কিছু একটা আগে করতে হবে, আইদার এটাকে রিমুভ করে দিতে হবে বা নাল করে দিতে হবে, ডু সামথিং বেসিক্যালি, এন্ড অনলি দেন উই ক্যান ডিলিট দিস রো। যখন ডিবিএমএস দেখবে যে কাস্টমার আইডি 1 is not being customer ID 1 is not being referenced anywhere, only then. আর যদি সেট টু নাল ইউজ করি তাহলে এই রোটা যদি ডিলিট করে দিই, অর্ডার টেবিলে যে এসে কি করবে? অর্ডার টেবিলে গিয়ে অটোমেটিক্যালি automatically in the order table, it will place null here. এই জায়গাটা একটা null বসায় দিবে, এই জায়গাটা একটা null বসায় দিবে। কাস্টমার আইডি ভ্যালু 1 যেখানে যেখানে আছে ওই জায়গাগুলোতে একটা null বসায় দিবে, null ভ্যালু বসিয়ে দিবে, ঠিক আছে? If you use set to null, and if you use cascade, then if you were to delete this row, then the corresponding row in the order table will also be deleted. ওই দুটো row just delete করে দিবে, ঠিক আছে? So anyway, the problem আমাদেরকে careful থাকতে হবে কখন? When we are deleting something from a table, and in that table the primary key is being referenced as a foreign key somewhere, কোন এক জায়গায়, সেটা সেই টেবিলেও হতে পারে বা বাইরের টেবিলেও হতে পারে, বাট এই টেবিলের প্রাইমারি কি যে কাস্টমার টেবিলের প্রাইমারি কি যে কাস্টমার আইডি, if customer ID is being referenced as a foreign key somewhere in whichever table, এই টেবিল বাইরের টেবিল whichever, তখন হচ্ছে কি আমাদেরকে কেয়ারফুল থাকতে হবে। Do you understand Tobu what I'm talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so ওরকম কেস হলে তখন যদি আমরা এই যে এখানে যে করছি delete from customer table where customer state is equal to hi, এটা যদি আমরা ট্রাই করতাম, কাস্টমার টেবিলে গিয়ে দেখি where customer state is hi, what is the customer id? Customer id is 14, so কি হবে? customer state hi আছে by the way শুধুমাত্র একটা রোতে, কিন্তু বাকি রো গুলোতে you will see that customer state value is not hi, it's something other than hi. So the only row that will be deleted is row number 14, because আমরা where clause এ বলে দিয়েছি where customer state is equal to hi, শুধুমাত্র ওই row number 14 টাই ডিলিট করা হবে where customer state is y, alright? এটা ছাড়া বাকি কোনো রো কিন্তু ডিলিট করা হবে না। Now let's take a look at the order table whether that will be a problem or not. See here, is there any customer id with the value 14 in the order table? No. So will that cause an issue? No. কোনো ইস্যুই হবে না। This row will be deleted without any problem because customer id 14 does not exist in the order table at all. However, আমরা যদি এই যে row 14 এর জায়গায় just একটা পরে row 15 টা ডিলিট করার চেষ্টা করতাম, তখন প্রবলেম হতো, because customer id 15 is there in the third row in the order table. What do you do with that? You can't have that. Okay, so that's why whenever a certain primary key value, the value, by the way, the value is being referenced as a foreign key somewhere, we have to be very careful, right? Let's say, for example, someone made a mistake engineering course table এ, যেখানে হচ্ছে কি সব ইঞ্জিনিয়ারিং কোর্স গুলো থাকার কথা, ওখানে হচ্ছে গিয়ে বিবিএ কোর্সের ডেটা ইনসার্ট করেছে, বিবিএ 101। সো তুমি হচ্ছে গিয়ে কি করবা? ইঞ্জিনিয়ারিং কোর্স টেবিলে গিয়ে কোর্স কোডের ভ্যালু 1000 10000 ভ্যালুর মধ্যে ঘাটাবা, কোর্স কোড ভ্যালু কোথায় বিবিএ 101 পাবো এটা বের করবা? নো, হোয়াট ইজ দ্য স্মার্টার ওয়ে টু গো? সিম্পলি ইউজ দিস কমান্ড, go to the engineering delete from the engineering course table, কোন কোর্সের ডেটা ইনসার্ট করা হয়েছিল which is not supposed to be in that table, BBA is 101, so where course code value is BBA 101. So what it will do is it will go to the engineering course table, it will look into or under the course code column, course code column এর আন্ডারে দেখবে BBA 101 এই ভ্যালুটাকে খুঁজে বের করবে, যে রোতে কোর্স কোডের ভ্যালু হচ্ছে কি BBA 101 ওই রো গুলোকে সে ডিলিট করে দিবে, right? That's how it will work. And as you can see, as we've talked about, deleting all rows from a customer table, if you don't include the where clause, that's what's going to happen. Finally, the update command. The update command, this here is pretty simple. You can expect at least one update command related question in the final exam, but there in no way will it resemble these queries. That is, it's not going to be simple like this. Why I'm mentioning this beforehand? Remember, once we're done with the complex queries, that those complex queries could be incorporated into the update commands, all right? So if you want that to be discussed a bit further, তাহলে আমরা যখন এই complex query নিয়ে কথা বলবো, complex joins and complex subqueries and so on, তখন হচ্ছে গিয়ে you can ask me to discuss this once again, how update commands can be modified using those complex mechanisms, all right? But for now, just to understand the basics, how update command works, the basic structure of the command, যে প্রত্যেকটা কিন্তু স্ট্রাকচার আছে বাই দ্য ওয়ে, এই কমান্ডগুলো যেভাবে, দিস ইজ সিনট্যাক্স, সো এই যে স্ট্রাকচার আছে এই স্ট্রাকচারই আমাদেরকে ফলো করতে হবে। সিমিলারলি আপডেট command also has a structure where you first mention which table you're updating. Update who? Update which table? So first command or first clause or first keyword is update. Use the update clause and mention the table you're trying to update. And then, what is it that you're updating? We're changing the product standard price value to something else. And finally, where are we making this change? Notice so far always that the where clause comes last. Here as well, the where clause will also come last. First, you mention which table you're updating. Then you mention what is it that you're changing and to what. Ki change korchi and change kore ki banachi. All right. And then finally, the condition. Where clause pointing towards the condition. Here, we want to change the standard price of a certain product to 775, this value. The standard price. What is it that we want to change? We want to change the standard price. To what? To 775. For who? For product 7. And all of these exist where? In the product table. So we are updating the product table basically. So update product table, set the attribute value, product standard price. So we are changing the standard price, right? So what is the specific, what is the exact name of standard price in the product table? In the product table, that is the product standard price column. So mention that specific name. Change to what? Change to 775. And finally, the where clause, the condition, telling us that this change will happen only for product ID 7. Okay. So in the student table, let's say we want to make an update. Remember, senior guide in the student table is a foreign key referencing the student ID primary key of the same table, the student table. Remember that. So we want to change the senior guide value of a certain student whose name is BM Fahim. So she student table is jabe. So first we have to mention the update clause. Update clause is to mention the specific name of this table. Then what is it that you're changing and changing to what? The senior guide value actually change korchi to the value 12. And where are you making the change? The condition. Where the ST name value is BM Fahim. So student table is jabe she first day. She dekhbe kon row te ST name value is BM Fahim. ওই রোতে গিয়ে senior guide value change করে 12 করে দিবেন. Now, if in that table, by any chance, there are multiple people with the same name BM Fahim, ধরো ওখানে 4 জন স্টুডেন্ট আছে যাদের নাম হচ্ছে BM Fahim, ওই 4টা স্টুডেন্টের রোতে গিয়ে senior guide value 12 এ আপডেট করে দেওয়া হবে for all those 4 students. That's why to avoid these situations, usually it's better to include ID in the where clause. See here, we've included the ID in the where clause, product ID. Product table product ID is equal to 7. একটাই row থাকবে. Product ID is going to be unique there. But student table, since we are searching by the name, and name is not necessarily going to be unique. BM Fahim নামের যদি অন্য কোনো স্টুডেন্ট থাকে ওই রোতে গিয়েও এই একই চেঞ্জটা করা হবে. Alright? Anyway, yeah.
For tables that have multiple primary keys, we use the AND, right?
For tables that have multiple primary keys, come again, we use?
Like, what do we do? Like, where ki amra AND keyword ota dibo?
Oh, you're talking about composite key?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So for composite key, what happens is that, yes, we can do that. We can use both conditions, this and that. মানে primary key value দোনোটা দিয়ে দিলাম. ঠিক আছে, we can do that. And the DBMS, what it does is, when we say composite key, ওরা sort of দুইটা value কে concatenate করে একটা value বানায় ফেলে. ঠিক আছে? Let's say, for example, if my primary key is made up of student ID and name, student ID is, let's say, 1032 1022, 1032 1022 BM Fahim সবগুলোকে একসাথে concatenate করে একটা value বানায় থাকে database. But yeah, you can do that in the conditions. Include both. Yeah, we can do that. All right. And thank you for pointing that out. ওই জায়গাটাই আমি আসছি যে এখানে কিন্তু দেখো where clause গুলো relatively very simple. However, it's possible to include, or there might be scenarios where your where clause will have to be a lot more complex than this. Where clause আরো এর থেকে অনেক বেশি complex হবে. You will see that এখানে nesting এর মতো একটা situation হবে. Alright, যেরকম আমরা নেস্ট করি ওভাবে হচ্ছে গিয়ে where clause হচ্ছে গিয়ে where এটার ভিতরে মানে প্যারেনথিসিস এর ভিতরে আমি আরেকটা পুরো একটা নতুন একটা SQL কোয়েরি চালাবো। SQL কোয়েরি চালিয়ে এরপরে হচ্ছে গিয়ে ওই কন্ডিশনের বেসিসে আমি বাকি কাজগুলো করব। ঠিক আছে, এটা হতেই পারে। So there will be an update problem for sure in the exam. There will be from DDL there will be a create problem. একটা create থাকবে, create command থাকবে, but create commands even though lengthy they are straightforward. As long as you understand the basics, create command এ ভুল করার কোনো কথা না, but still practice because once again at least you have to understand the basics and it's lengthy, remember. And update command will definitely be there in the exam as well, but not in this simple format. The query, I can assure you, will be such that in the where clause, it's going to be a lot more complex. You will have to use multiple conditions. You might have to use a subquery in the sense that parentheses ভিতরে আরেকটা query থাকবে, ঠিক আছে, যেটার বেসিসে কাজগুলো করা হবে। But anyway, for now, we're not going to talk about those complex situations. ওগুলো আর আমরা পরে দেখবো। আমরা এরপরে, after we are done with this, we're going to actually look at basic fetching, data fetching commands, right? Basic fetch যেগুলো ওগুলো দেখবো। ওখানের মধ্যে হচ্ছে কি আমরা aggregate functions and mixing aggregate functions with non-aggregate functions এই জিনিসগুলো দেখবো। Those are a bit complex as well, and then we will move on to SQL join, and after that we will move on to SQL subqueries, and from there you can circle back to update commands, and remember that subqueries can be used in update commands as well, right? Right then, let's keep the lecture short for today. Let's end it here, but before we go, remember that there is an advanced makeup class this Saturday, no?
থার্সডেও আছে ম্যাম?
Thursday? No. Saturday.
আপনি টুমরো এন্ড স্যাটারডে দুই দিন লিখছেন।
Did I do that?
এই কারণে
I
একটু
did have that in
কনফিউজ
mind.
করে গিয়েছিলাম ম্যাম যে টুমরো স্যাটারডে।
It's a typo. It's
Ah,
definitely
right,
a typo.
Okay, sorry about that. No, tomorrow. I don't mean to say that tomorrow is Saturday. Tomorrow is not Saturday. I meant to say that it's Saturday.
আই
Just
থট দুই
Saturday.
দিনই আছে।
No. Just
টুমরো
Saturday.
আছে, স্যাটারডে দুই দিনই আছে।
No.
ইয়েস
Just
ম্যাম,
Saturday.
আমরা
Just
আমরা
Saturday.
ভাবতেছিলাম যে দুই দিনই মেকআপ ক্লাস হবে।
Okay. No, just Saturday. Just Saturday. Okay.
Okay,
All right
okay.
then. So I'll see you guys on Saturday. Please make sure to attend the makeup class. Attendance, of course, is mandatory. And also, if you want to be able to do well in SQL, you should attend that session because that's where our SQL gears up, basically. Our SQL complex হওয়া শুরু করবে ওখান থেকে, from the next session onwards. So make sure that before you come to that session, you also are prepared by going through the rest of the lectures. All right, lecture recording upload করে দেওয়া হবে and lecture slides already আছে. Go through them before you come into the session, and most importantly, please make sure that you have created the tables in your own local devices. Database create করেছো, PVFC database, as well as the pubs database create করেছো in your own local devices. All right, pubs database create করেছো, make sure you do that, because what we'll do is এই যে আজকে যেরকম দেখলা এরকম similar structure আমরা হচ্ছে গিয়ে first PVFC ডাটাবেজের যে এক্সাম্পলটা ওটা ইউজ করে হচ্ছে কি আমরা কোয়েরিগুলোকে ফার্স্ট স্টাডি করব। দ্যাট ইজ হাউ দ্য কোয়েরি ওয়ার্কস। উইল স্টাডি দ্যাট, উইল ডিসকাস দ্যাট বেসড অন দ্য পিভিএফসি ডাটাবেস। অলরাইট, এন্ড দেন পাবস ডাটাবেজের বেসিসে I will ask you guys questions. I will specifically point towards someone and ask them question based on the PUBS database. Why are we going to do that? Because we need to practice the queries in terms of the PUBS database, because in the final exam, the SQL queries will be given based on the PUBS database. So PVFC use করব to learn, and then PUBS use করে আমরা problem solve করার চেষ্টা করব within the class. একটা PVFC example দেখে বুঝবো, and then PUBS use করে আমরা ওটা নিজেরা এক্সিকিউট করার চেষ্টা করব। সো ইফ ইউ হ্যাভ দিস ডাটাবেসেস রেডি এন্ড রানিং, ইন দ্যাট কেস তোমরা নিজেরা হচ্ছে গিয়ে নিজেদের ডিভাইসে এটা ট্রাই করে দেখতে পারবে, ঠিক আছে? সো দ্যাট উইল হেল্প ইউ ইন দ্য এন্টায়ার লার্নিং প্রসিজার, ওকে? অ্যান্ড while you create the databases, remember the thing about date time ফরম্যাটটা নিয়ে একটু কেয়ারফুল থাকবা, বিকজ ডেট টাইম ফরম্যাট, এখানে যে ডেট টাইম ফরম্যাটটা দেওয়া আছে, নট নেসেসারিলি যে the database you're going to use, that one will have the same date time format, all right? And it'll be easy for you if you use MySQL, but feel free to use some other database if you want to, all right? MySQL ইউজ করলে তোমাদের জন্য ইজি হবে, just mention. Okay, all right then, that's all for today. I'll see you guys on Saturday 11 a.m. If you don't
Miss,
have
I
any
had a
questions,
question.
you can feel free to leave